Parsha Shmos. Let's run through a few ideas here. The Torah is very concerned that the quality of a Jewish leader should be filled with qualifications that describe a person's moral character, their level of sensitivity, as we mentioned before, and many other factors. The Rambam, in the Laws of Sanhedrin, where he talks about what the legal qualifications of a dayan are, of a judge to sit on a beis din, he says that there's a hierarchy of qualification. If you want to be part of the Sanhedrin of 71 judges, you need to be really, really highly qualified. Then there's a lower level of a Sanhedrin of 23 judges. And then there's a standard beis din of 3 judges. And even though those are the lowest qualifications, but you certainly need certain moral and personality features that make you qualified to be a dayan, to be a judge. And the Rambam therefore says in the second chapter of Halacha Zayin of Hilchos Sanhedrin, he says, "Af beis din shel shlosha, afal pi she'en medakdegin bahen b'chol elu hadivarim." Even though we're not as careful and meticulous as vetting these judges with the previous qualifications that we mentioned before, tzarich sheyehi b'chol echad mehem shiva devarim ve'eluhein. But anyone who's going to sit on a beis din even of 3 judges has to have the following 7 qualifications: chokhmah, wisdom; anava, humility; yira, fear of God; sinas mamon, a hatred, literally a hatred of money; ahavas ha'emes, a love of truth; ahavas habrios lahen, a love of people; ubale shem tov, and then and the final is that you have to have a good name, good reputation. You have to have these 7 qualities. And then the Rambam says, "V'chol elu hadivarim mefurashin hein b'Torah." He says all of these 7 qualities are enumerated in one way or the other in the Torah. And then we're going to skip a few lines where you see the underlined section begins. He says, "Ulahalan hu omer anshe chayil." You know, the story of Yisro, when he told Moshe who to select as his lower judges, he said, "Choose men who are anshe chayil." Anshe chayil means men of valor. Like we say, Eshes Chayil, right? Anshe chayil, men of valor. So what does that mean? Elu shehin giborim b'mitzvos. This refers to people who are mighty in their mitzvah observance. Umedaktikim al atzmam. They're very meticulous in their personal observance. V'kovshim es yitzran. And they conquer their evil inclination. Ad shelo yehi lahen shum genai v'lo shum ra, or shem ra, so that there's nothing disparaging that anyone can say about them. They have no evil name distributed in the community about them. V'yehi pirkan na'eh, and they should have a nice appearance. In other words, they should present themselves well. And then he says, "Uvichlal anshe chayil sheyi lahem leiv amitz." That included in this term anshe chayil is the requirement that they have a courageous heart. Now, what does it mean to be courageous? Lahatzil ashuk miyad ashko. To be able to be prepared to insert yourself to save the oppressed from his oppressor. Ke'inyan shenemar, as it says, Vayaka Moshe vayoshian, that Moshe arose and saved Yisro's daughters, as we'll learn in just a moment. Uma Moshe Rabbeinu anav af kol dayan tzarich liosnav. And another qualification that we learn from Moshe is just like Moshe was humble, so too every judge must be humble. So there are 2 things that we learn from Moshe. That you have to be an ish chayil, which the Rambam says from Moshe, we learn that you have to be ready to try and save the oppressed. And number 2, that you have to be humble. Now, if we look carefully at the Torah in this week's Parsha, we're going to discover that there are 3 distinct episodes where Moshe is there to insert himself into a situation that's really none of his business and to try and help out the oppressed, where he could easily have just as well looked the other way and yet refuses to do so. The first episode is when Moshe first becomes an adult and he goes out and he sees the oppression of the Jews. And the Torah says in Perek Beis, Vayar ish mitzri makeh ish ivri me'echav. That at the end of Pasuk Yud Aleph it says that he sees an Egyptian man striking a Hebrew slave. And the Torah says, Vayifen kovacho, vayar ki ein ish. He faces hither and yon, sees that there's no one there. Vayaches hamitzri vayitmenehu bachol. He strikes the Egyptian, thereby killing him. And the Gemara elaborates on what right Moshe had to kill the Egyptian. And vayitmenehu bachol, and Moshe hides the body in the sand. So here Moshe is saving the oppressed from his oppressor. The second episode of Moshe saving the oppressed from its oppressor is the story that was quoted by the Rambam, where Moshe flees to Midjan, and the Torah says that the Yisro, the priest of Midjan, has 7 daughters. They come to the well to draw water, and in Pasuk Yud Zayin it says, Vayavo haroim vayagorishum, that the other shepherds try to take advantage of the weakness of these daughters and try to chase them away. Vayaka Moshe vayoshian, but Moshe comes along. You know, I still can't get Charlton Heston out of my head, no matter how hard I try. I'm sorry, I just can't. It's very hard. It's one of the harmful influences of Hollywood. But I just remember that image. Vayashkes sonam, and he comes and he gives the sheep of Yisro to drink. Okay. And then the third, yes?
In Pasuk Yud Beis, where it says Moshe looked this way and that way, Vayar ki ein ish, is that because he didn't want anyone to see what he was doing, or is that because he wanted to see if anyone else was going to do anything and b'makom she'ein ish nishtad li Yosef?
Could be. I mean,
but which one was it? Like, was he just scared?
Shivim panim la Torah. There are 70 aspects. If you take a look at Rashi learns like neither of your suggestions. Rashi learns that there was a much deeper introspection, that Moshe was looking at prophetically all the future generations that were potentially going to come from this person. And he saw that there was nothing redeemable about letting this person live. Vayar ki ein ish means he saw that there was nothing, there was no man that this person could ever reproduce from himself that would be of any worth. And that's why he killed him. But I like your interpretations too. In any event, so that's the second time that Moshe saves the oppressed from its oppressor. And the third time is Umoshe hayaroes son Yisro. Moshe is shepherding the sheep of Yisro. Vayinhages hatzon achar hamidbar, and he grazes or leads the flock or leads the sheep out past the desert, and he comes to the Mount of God in Chorev. Now here you don't see anything explicit in the Torah other than Moshe is shepherding the sheep. But if you take a look at the Medrash, it says something very, very interesting. The Medrash tells us about both King David and Moshe Rabbeinu. We're coming into the middle of the Medrash. The Medrash says, Ulumi bochein latzadik, shenemar Hashem tzadik yivchan. Who does God examine? God examines the righteous. God tests the righteous, as it says in Tehillim, that God will test the righteous. Uvamehu bochano bimar'ei hatzon, or bimir'ei hatzon. With what does God test the righteous? With a flock of sheep. Bodak leDavid bitzon, that, for example, God tested King David with sheep. Umitzao ro'eh yafeh, and God discovered that King David was a good shepherd. Shenemar vayikachehu mimichlaos tzon, that it says that God had taken him from the michlaot of the sheep. Now, what is mahu mimichlaot tzon? Kemo vayikalei hageshem. The word michlaot means depriving or deprivation. So what does that mean? Hayomoneya hagedolim mipnei hakitanim. This means that David was very careful to pull away the bigger sheep from where the smaller sheep were grazing. Because if you let all the big and small animals go to the food together, who's going to be elbowed out? The little ones. So you have to separate the big ones from the little ones so that the little ones will have food. V'haya motzi haktanim lir'os kedei shiru esav harach. So first what he would do is he would let the little ones, the little sheep, graze first. so that they would be able to eat the soft grass that was growing. Then he would take the older sheep to let them graze the harder grass that was growing. And then he would bring the, I think they're called the ewes. Is that E-W-E? Is a ewe a male? Oh, that's a female? What do you call it? The rams. He would take the rams. The rams, he brought out the bachurim, the really strong rams. Those are the ones who were able to eat the really hard grass, even harder than the second. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mishayahu Yodeya Lir'os Hatzon, Ish Lefi Kocho, Yavo V'yir'eh Ba'ami. So Hashem says like this, he says, if a person is knowledgeable enough to know how to shepherd sheep in this way, each sheep according to its ability, that's the person that I want to be the leader of my people. Hahu dichsiv me'achar alos heviyehu liros b'Yakov amo. That after God brought him up, or me'achar halos hevio, that after his coming up, God brought him to shepherd Jacob, his nation. And then the Medrash shifts, and it says that this is true by David, and it's true for Moshe as well. Va'af Moshe lo bochano hakadosh baruch hu ela batzon. That Moshe also was only tested by God through sheep. Amru Rabotenu kishahaya Moshe Rabbeinu olav hashalom ro'et tzano shel Yisro b'midbar. That when Moshe was shepherding Yisro's sheep, borach mimenu gedi, a little kid, a baby, a lamb, ran away. V'rotz acharav ad shehigia lechasit. So, and he ran after it until he came to a chasit, which I think means a ridge. I'm not sure. Keven shehigia lechasit nizdamnu lo berecha shel mayim ve'amad hagedi lishtot. Once they came to a ridge, all of a sudden the little lamb found a pool of water, and it started to drink from the water. Keven shehigia Moshe etzlo amar ani lo hayisi yodeya sheratz hayisa mipnei tzama. That Moshe says to the lamb, oh, little lamb, I didn't know that that's the reason why you ran away, because you were thirsty. Ayefata, you must be tired. Here kivo al ksefo v'haya mehalech. And so Moshe picked up the lamb, put it on its shoulders, and brought it back to the flock. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu yesh lecha rachamim linhog tzano shel basar vadam. Hashem says, you have that level of compassion to be able to take such passionate and sensitive care of someone else's livestock. Kach, in this way, chayecha ata tir'etz on Yisrael. So therefore I declare that you will shepherd my flock, the Jewish people, Hevei u'Moshe hayaroeh. And that's why Moshe encounters the burning bush, and prefacing that story is the story of him shepherding the sheep. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Anyway, so this, according to some commentaries, is the necessary preface, like the Medrash says, to the revelation that God has to Moshe in the burning bush. So before we go any further, I just want to raise something very interesting. You have here 3 stories of Moshe displaying this level of sensitivity, compassion, and being able to try to save the oppressed in a state of oppression. Why do you need 3 stories? Why do you need 3 stories when one story would have sufficed? Why not the story of saving someone from being stricken? Why not just the story of Yisro's daughters? And why the story of the little lamb? Yes?
Maybe because 3 is a chazaka?
Well, that could be. 3 is a chazaka, right? Because, you're establishing a pattern. It's not just the fluke. That's a good answer, yeah. I think that if you look at the stories in a certain way, you find that they're going in ascending order of compassion or sensitivity. It's one thing to rise to the occasion when you see someone about to be killed. According to the Gemara, the reason why Moshe was justified in killing the Egyptian taskmaster is because the Hebrew slave was about to be killed. I mean, he was really taking such a brutal beating that if he would have taken one more hit of the whip, he would have fallen to his death. And that's why Moshe, the Gemara says, This Egyptian was what we call a rodef, and you're allowed to kill a rodef if that's the only way to stop him from killing an innocent person. So it's one thing to prevent someone from being murdered. You can certainly imagine most people rising to that occasion if they have the ability to do so. But we go to the next story, and the next story is not saving someone from being murdered. It's just helping out some people who are being treated like second-class citizens. You know, what would have happened? The shepherds would have chased them away. They would have had to wait a few hours until the shepherds took all of the water for their sheep, and they would have come back afterwards. Probably that's what they did before Moshe was around. And Moshe says that's not just, that's not fair. And it rises to the next level of compassion and sensitivity and a call for justice. But here you're not saving anyone's life. And the third level, of course, is where you're not helping another human being, you're helping someone's livestock. So you're having compassion for someone's possessions, not the person themselves. So of course it's an ascending level of sensitivity. I think you could also perhaps make the argument, and I think this is just as correct, that you look at the three classes of victim that Moshe is helping. The first one is Jewish. So of course I'm going to help them. They're my brother, Unzer. They're my fellow landsman, right? So of course I'm going to help a fellow Jew. But then he goes and he sees someone from a foreign country. It's much easier as a foreigner to say, the shlech the goyim, let them fend for themselves. What do I have to get involved? What do I have to worry about the refugees from countries where there's genocide taking place? Let somebody else worry about them, right? But no, Moshe Rabbeinu is worried about them as well. And then the third is that it's not even just a human being, it's a living creature. And you could say, living creatures, what do they have? What difference does it make, Who cares what happens to a little kitty cat? But no, Moshe Rabbeinu has compassion and care for even the smallest of Hashem's creatures. So that also is going in ascending order of sensitivity. But now we get to the final thing that I wanted to point out, is that according to some commentaries, it is the very image of the burning bush that is conveying to Moshe Rabbeinu why he is being chosen as the leader of the Jewish people. Now, many of us look at the image of the burning bush and we say that's the story of the Jewish people, that we are burning but we're never consumed, and that the key to our survival is that constant burning and so forth. But there's a sefer called Sharei Simcha from Harav Simcha Bunim Sofer, who's the grandson of the Chassam Sofer. And he goes on the pasuk that we're in source number 6 in Perek Gimel pasuk Yud Beis. Hashem says, "Vayomer ki eheyeh imach." Moshe says, "Who am I that I should go to Paro?" And what does Hashem respond to him? "I will be with you, Moshe. V'zeh lecha ha'os ki anochi shalachticha." And this is the very sign that I have sent you. And the Rav Sofer learns that this burning bush is the sign to indicate why I have chosen you specifically. Let's take a look what he says. Vayomer ki eheyeh imach v'zeh lecha ha'os ayin barashi shekoy al mara hasneh v'nitchak b'peirosh ha'os v'nir li. So he says, take a look at Rashi, but I'm going to tell you my interpretation. Kasher kvar herachti b'makom acher, as I've explained elsewhere, kol ki ikar mashe bachar Hashem b'Moshe. The reason why did Hashem choose Moshe in the first place? Mishum shekasher gadal Moshe v'yatzei alecha v'yar b'sivlosam. That when Moshe became an adult and went out to see his brethren and sees their suffering, afal pisha niskadel b'veis Paro, even though he had been raised in the lap of luxury in Paro's house, never experienced slavery on his own, B'chol zos hayelo leiv lihishtatev b'tzar shel echav. Despite that, he still felt, he had the heart. Like we learned in the Kuzari, he had that sensitive heart to be able to feel the pain of the other. V'nokam nikmas achiv b'ish mitzri, to the point where he felt he needed to take vengeance and protect his fellow brother. U'mizen nir'eh v'nikares libo ha'ne'eman malei ahava shel Moshe le'echav Yisrael. And from that episode, you saw the great love and the big heart that Moshe had for his fellow Jewish people. And therefore, it was clear that he would be a reliable shepherd of the Jewish people to insert himself anytime the Jewish people needed salvation, protection, intercession, defense. Moshe, you could count on him, he would be there for his fellow Jew. Ve'alha shenigla Hashem basnek varnemar b'midrash v'chein barashi mishum imo anochi b'tzara. He says, what is the whole vision of the sneh? The Medrash and Rashi tell us that this vision is try to explain that I, God, am with the Jewish people in their time of travail. The bush is burning, and I am with them in this. V'chein asa Moshe, v'holach bozeh b'darchei Hashem liishtateif b'tzaram shel Yisrael. But that's exactly what Moshe was doing. He was saying, I'm not going to let my brethren suffer alone. I will be a part of them. B'zeh rotzeh Hashem. And this is exactly what Hashem wants. Al kein omar v'zeh lecha ha'os. And that's why Hashem said that this is the sign, or explanation as to why I've chosen you. Yan shenigla b'sneh mishum imo anochi b'tzara. He says, because the sneh represents that I, Hashem, am inseparable from the Jewish people during their time of pain. Al kein bishvil tam zeh anochi shalachticha, shegam hu asa kein. That's the reason why Hashem said, I'm sending you Moshe. Because of that vision of the burning bush, where the fire is attaching itself to the bush that is in a state of stress, in a state of distress, that fire is you, Moshe. The Jewish people are the bush. You're the fire. And you refuse to separate from them. You refuse to be consumed. You refuse to wear out. You're always going to be there for the Jewish people. That's the reason why I've chosen you. So if you want to know what it takes for a person to be a Jewish leader, to have the qualities that HaKadosh Baruch Hu admires, the number one quality, both as the Rambam said and that what we learned from Moshe Rabbeinu, is not wisdom, is not charisma, is not great knowledge, is not physical strength. It's the ability to be willing to sacrifice himself and insert himself on behalf of his brother or sister. That's the most important quality of leadership. We see this from Moshe, we see this from David, and we see that is in itself the very image of the burning bush, of the sneh, bo'er ba'esh. We have to be prepared to be inseparable from the rest of our brethren in Klal Yisrael, and if we see any single Jew suffering or oppressed, we have to be ready to, even at personal expense, to be able to be out there to help them and save them. Okay? Everyone have a great